What? You gonna hit me? Nah. Nothing but a coward. Where's Laurel? Screw you!
The movie begins in Cleveland, Ohio, where a couple of police officers are chasing down some suspicious teenagers through the suburbs. Two of them are pinned down, while the other two got away and meet up in front of a house. They didn't see the officer that was hiding and is ready to catch them, but the shorter kid tackles the officer to help his friend run away. It costs him his freedom, and he gets arrested in the front yard. The boy is named Robbie, and it turns out that he's being arrested in front of his own grandma's lawn. His grandma is tired of his rebellious antics, as it isn't his first time getting arrested, so she says that she's had enough. As a result, Robbie moves to Melbourne, Florida, where he is greeted by his Aunt Cindy at the airport. He doesn't seem enthused about the move, but he had no choice. They arrive at Robbie's new home where Cindy reintroduces him to his cousin, a 12-year-old girl named Katie. They exchange half-forced pleasantries, since they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Robbie remembers that it had been 7 years, ever since his mother's funeral. He then walks to the backyard where his uncle Glen is grilling by the pool. He welcomes his nephew and tells Robbie to set the table up for their meal. Robbie isn't used to doing chores, as he's been a rebellious kid.
I'm a guest, yo.
No, your family and family works together.
While Robbie settles in his new room, Glen expresses his doubts about welcoming Robbie into their family. However, Cindy assures him that Robbie is a good kid deep down, despite his father abandoning him at birth and his mother died when he was very young. That night, Robbie feels restless, so he decides to sneak out of the house. He visits a gas station to buy some snacks and tries to buy a pack of cigarettes. The clerk won't sell him cigarettes without an ID, so he gives up. Upon walking out, he sees a beautiful girl sitting in an expensive convertible car.
Nice car.
He makes small talk and introduces himself to the girl named Rina. She seems surprised but receptive of Robbie, until her boyfriend comes. He is pissed at Robbie for talking to his girlfriend.
Easy, man. Stop!
So he punches Robbie in the face until he falls over. Rina tries to stop him, so they leave together in the car. In the morning, Robbie comes down for breakfast and tries to lie about where he got the bruise. It's no use since Katie heard him sneak back in the house and told her parents about it. The first day of school starts off badly as Robbie cannot find his first class, even when asking a teacher.
Oh, looks like somebody got a little beat up last night.
He eventually finds the English class and finds that Rina is in the same class. Unfortunately, so is Bo, her boyfriend who punched him. He's seated right in front of Bo, who gives him a warning to stay away from Rina. However, Robbie has an attitude himself, and he refuses to just submit to Bo's demands. This causes him to get shoved into the women's toilet by Bo. Robbie slumps his way to a table in the schoolyard where he meets a student named Lenny. Lenny warns the new kid about messing with Bo because his parents are very rich and important people in their area, so nobody is brave enough to ever put Bo in place. He also suggests for Robbie to learn how to fight back. Once school ends and Robbie arrives home, he sees a note from his aunt to come to the family's restaurant down the pier. Cindy is busy with planning an event for her friend and also a full house restaurant. When Robbie walks in, she immediately greets him and asks how his first day of school went. Seeing that her nephew had a tough time at school, she tries to cheer him up by gifting him a phone. It's not a smartphone, but at least they can reach Robbie anytime now. Despite being unimpressed by the dumb phone, Robbie is still grateful. Suddenly, a stranger comes up to them and pulls out a knife. Robbie panics, but Cindy immediately starts defending herself and her nephew by beating up the mugger with her martial arts skills. This highly impresses the teenager, who can't believe that his aunt is an amazing fighter. She explains that she used to study Tang Soo Do when she was a young girl, before meeting Glen and then training under him. Seeing Robbie's interest, Cindy suggests that he visit Glen's dojo called Space Coast Dojo. There, many kids are training under his supervision, doing a variety of different martial arts styles. He also sees pictures of Glen and Cindy from when they're young and actively doing martial arts. Robbie watches his uncle's class from the sidelines until a girl approaches and welcomes him. Robbie stays there until the classes are finished, finally greeting his uncle who's cleaning up for the day. He expresses his awe and surprise about his aunt and uncle's skills, wondering why he never knew about it. Glen says it's because Cindy's mother doesn't approve of martial arts, not understanding that it's different and more dignified than street fighting.
But I was wondering, would you teach me?
I'm not sure you're ready.
Why not?
You've been watching me put these chairs away, and you never offered to help. I mean, you're either selfish or lazy, and that's a dangerous combination for a martial artist.
Robbie begs for a chance to become a better kid, to have something positive to focus on for once in his troubled life. So Glen agrees, but only if Robbie starts to clean up his act. The first task to achieve that is by helping Glen clean up around the dojo and at home too. Robbie is very excited about the opportunity. When they get home, he tells Cindy and Katie that he'll start training tomorrow. Cindy is elated, but Katie, being a 12-year-old little sibling, tries to scare Robbie by saying that he's in for a world of pain. Robbie is a little worried at Katie's joking remarks, but his first day of training goes without much pain. In fact, since he's the only white belt there, his movements are stiff and awkward, so Glen has to teach him where and how to punch during training. Once training is done, Glen takes Robbie to a store to get some wheels, as he's going to need it to help around at the dojo. Robbie is beyond excited because he thinks Glen is buying him a car, but his cheers die down once he realizes that he's getting a bike instead. There's nobody manning the shop, and when Glen investigates, he finds the owner being harassed by a customer who insists that he gets a refund for his bike. Seeing that the burly customer is starting to get violent, Glen steps in to beat him up and save the owner. Of course, Robbie is once again elated to watch the beatdown. The owner is grateful that Glen has saved him, and it turns out that he is Rina's father. He tells Rina to give Robbie and Glen the hero discount. Robbie and Rina's interaction in the shop is awkward and sheepish, which immediately signals to Glen that they both like each other. He gives his nephew some advice on how to ask Rina out, but Robbie says it's complicated since she is in a relationship with Bo. While Glen returns home, Robbie wants to take his new bike for a ride around town. He sees another dojo called Dojo Extreme and decides to check it out. Inside, many intense-looking people are training and sparring, with a completely different vibe from Glen's dojo. He's then greeted by the owner of the dojo, Laurent Kaine. Kaine explains that his dojo focuses less on the martial arts philosophies and more on how to effectively subjugate their opponents, if he wants to learn how to fight as soon as possible. But Robbie says he'll think about it. When he walks out of the dojo, Bo, who is a member of Dojo Extreme, sees him leaving. On his ride home, Robbie decides to stop at the gas station where he runs into Rina once again. They make small talk, and Rina mentions that she's on her way to the zoo where she does volunteer work. She asks if Robbie wants to come along, and he agrees. The two teens proceed to have a fun time hanging out at the zoo, talking and sightseeing and making memories. They're quite smitten with one another. Meanwhile, in their English class the next day, Bo confronts Robbie about visiting Dojo Extreme. Robbie denies that he ever went there, and Rina backs him up, saying that she saw him eating yogurt outside of the gas station at the time Bo says he saw Robbie. Robbie continues his daily routine. He trains at Space Coast Dojo with Cindy. He goes to stare at Rina longingly from across the bike shop, and he even tries to help Glen clean up the pool. Robbie asks about Glen's past since he doesn't know much about his own uncle. Glen opens up by saying that he and Cindy used to work for NASA to train astronauts before they go to space.
We used to work for the government.
Like the government?
NASA. We trained astronauts.
This gets Robbie to bring up Coach Kaine and Dojo Extreme. Glen says that Kaine used to train under him, but due to his more violent views on martial arts, Glen has to let him go his separate way. In the following days, Glen recognizes Robbie's change in habits for the better. He takes Robbie to attend a martial arts event with him, and they continue Robbie's training in the dojo. The young man is helped with the more experienced students in the dojo too, and not long after, he receives his yellow belt. More training ensues, and now Robbie is a certified green belt martial artist. This boosts his confidence to finally apply for the part-time job at the bike shop. Rina's father immediately agrees, but on the condition that Robbie tries his best to keep Rina away from Bo and his Dojo Extreme peers. Right below Cindy's restaurant, a few men are bullying Lenny. Cindy comes down to beat them up with ease until the cops arrive to arrest them. She then takes Lenny to the dojo, where he asks Robbie to also guide him to train martial arts so he can defend himself. Robbie then mirrors Glen's words about martial arts being more than just fighting. On the opposite side, in Dojo Extreme, Kaine's fiancée is feeling ignored by him. She approaches a new member of the dojo to share her woes, so that he would challenge Kaine in a fight.
Any kind of man will make a pretty lady like you cry is a man that doesn't deserve you, and I ain't afraid of no man.
Kaine? I'm leaving with Derek.
What's up, bro? You like making girls cry?
Assert!
Sometime later, Robbie is working his shift at the bike shop when Rina approaches him. She asks if he's reading a book for English class, and they start talking about literature. Clearly, Rina is very interested and well-versed in English literature, and while Robbie isn't as informed as she is, he also understands the topic well. Rina says that Beau is the one who introduced her to an author that she loves, and despite his brutish behavior, he can be a real sweetheart. Their next interaction happens during a Halloween party. Rina and Beau are having an argument until Beau leaves the party to hang out with his friends. Robbie sees her feeling dejected alone and decides to cheer her up by offering to hang out with him and Katie during the party. However, Katie is gone from his sight, which causes the teen boy to panic. He searches for his little cousin, who eventually shows up and is happy because Robbie was worried about her. Glen and Cindy dance in front of the party's crowd, closing the event with a bang. Life moves on, and after a one-on-one training session with Glen, Robbie receives a call from Rina. She asks if Robbie will be working at her dad's shop tomorrow. He doesn't have a shift there for tomorrow, which disappoints Rina a little bit because tomorrow is her birthday. She also reveals that she just broke up with Beau, and she wants to see Robbie because he can always cheer her up. So, despite not having to go work, Robbie stops by the bike shop the next day. He wishes his crush a happy birthday and gives her a book that he thinks she'll like. Rina is touched by his kind gesture and returns the gift with a kiss. Now that they're officially a couple, Rina surprises Robbie by visiting him in the dojo while he's training after opening hours. She asks to spar with her new boyfriend, so they have a lighthearted match that ends in smiles and giggles. Even Glen lets them have their fun together. They go on dates to the mall and the pier too, before Rina officially joins the dojo as a beginner student. One day, when Robbie is riding his bike, Beau and his friend drive up to halt him. Beau is clearly upset that Robbie has supposedly stolen his girl, so he tries to provoke Robbie to punch him and start a fight.
What? You gonna hit me? Nah. Nothing but a coward.
Following his uncle's martial arts principles, Robbie refuses to give in to the taunts. Beau and his friend eventually give up, calling Robbie a coward. Instead, Glen goes to visit Dojo Extreme to talk with Kaine. He reminds Kaine of his responsibility as the dojo's master to discipline his students. Kaine agrees with his old teacher's advice and asks which of his students has been bullying Robbie. Glen only mentions Beau's name, but Kaine becomes visibly hesitant. Glen notices this, and before he leaves, he makes a remark that Kaine is too scared to go against Beau's family who had bought the dojo. Back at the house, Robbie is helping Cindy water their front lawn when Rina pulls up in her new car. She's excited to take her boyfriend for a ride, so Robbie hops in after getting Cindy's permission to cut his chore short. They go to the pier, where Robbie gives her another gift. It's a necklace with a heart-shaped locket that has pictures of both of them inside. The happy couple share a kiss, and at the same time, Beau happens to drive by and see the lovebirds. After their date at the pier, Rina drops off Robbie at his house before stopping at the gas station. When she walks out, Beau confronts her by snagging her necklace and stomping it on the ground. Thankfully, he leaves right after, but Rina is still left shocked and scared by Beau's aggressive behavior. She immediately calls Robbie and explains what happened, telling him that she's scared. Worried and enraged, Robbie bolts out of the house to Rina's side so he can comfort her. Then he visits Dojo Extreme in search for Beau, but the doors are shut and nobody seems to be there. He then hurries to a neighborhood yard where a few of Beau's friends are playing basketball. Robbie forcefully asks where Beau is, fighting against 3 guys on his own while repeating the question over and over.
Where's tomorrow? Screw you!
With no answer, Robbie leaves them to continue his search. One of the beaten-up guys calls Beau to warn him about Robbie. Robbie's next stop is a cafe where some of Beau's friends are hanging out. Again, he launches himself into a fight while asking Beau's whereabouts. This time, a bystander records the fight and uploads it on social media, which almost instantly goes viral with the local townsfolk. At least Robbie pays for the meals he ruined before he walks out of the cafe. While the fighting video is still spreading, Reggie returns to Dojo Extreme since there is now a car parked up front. Upon entering, he is greeted with Kaine and his whole crew standing in front of the cage with Beau inside of it. They're clearly ready for a fight, thinking that Robbie came alone. However, Robbie reveals that he's not alone after all, and that his uncle, aunt, and friends from Space Coast Dojo have also gathered to help him out. On Kaine's command, the Dojo Extreme Fighters begin attacking the Space Coast Fighters. As the group brawls throughout the dojo, Robbie walks up to enter the ring and fights against Bo one-on-one. In the beginning, Robbie gets hit a few times by the more experienced fighter, but he maintains his ground. Eventually, Robbie gets a few kicks and punches in, and manages to tackle and pin Bo on the ground. Cindy notices that one of Dojo Extreme's fighters is pulling out a gun, so she disarms him, taking the gun and shooting it towards the roof. With everyone's attention on her, she instructs them to stop fighting. Robbie also stops after Bo taps out a few times in pain, signaling his surrender. Robbie considers this as the end of their feud as he puts Bo in his place. Meanwhile, Glen notices that Kaine is slipping away from the dojo while leaving the fighting to his students. He follows Kaine outside as the younger master walks toward an indoor batting cage building. Kaine walks inside, but when Glen follows suit, he loses track of Kaine. While looking around inside one of the cages, Glen gets distracted by the machine and then ambushed by Kaine. The two trade intense blows, even using baseball bats at one point, until a security guard walks in on them. Not wanting to get mixed up in trouble, the guard gives them 2 minutes to finish their fight. This allows Glen to strategically defeat Kaine. He reminds Kaine that, as masters, they're both responsible for their students' behavior, and Kaine admits that he needs to learn more from old-school traditions. The movie ends with the Space Coast Dojo crew celebrating their win at the beach. However, from a yacht near the coast, Bo's father watches them through his binoculars. He tells his son to prepare for some revenge,